Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Bloody Jacob here to bring you my review of the 1984 horror classic Nightmare on Elm Street. Wow, this review has been a long time coming. I mean, it's a movie that if people see my channel, they see like the theme of it and what I talk about and stuff, they'd assume I would have already done a video on it. But I haven't. But just this weekend I was really getting in the mood for the series again, and I thought what better time than to what better time than to start doing it right now is basically what I was trying to say right there. And today, November 9th, is actually the 30th anniversary of the original release of the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I actually didn't plan that, I'll be honest, but it's really awesome that I actually chose today to do the review. I actually got this review out a little bit later than usual. It's going to be about 7 or just before, or like right around 7 p.m. on the East Coast, before this one is actually uploaded. So I was a little bit later on putting this one up than I planned on doing today, but it's still the 9th, it's still the 30th anniversary, and since it is the 9th, it is a celebration of 30 years since Nightmare on Elm Street started. Just a legendary series, man. I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. This is an amazing, amazing horror series. And really, the first one has to be one of the greatest horror movies of all time, no question. And rewatching the first one again last night, I believe I actually prefer the Part 1 to Nightmare on Elm Street over Part 1 to Friday the 13th and over the first part of Halloween. And that's saying quite a lot. I could do a whole video comparing each of the first movies, but I don't think I enjoyed either of those nearly as much as the original Nightmare on Elm Street right here. And as you can see, I got this on a 4-film favorites set. See, it comes with the first one, the second, Freddy's Revenge, Dream Warriors, and Dream Master. I got the second set, which comes with, Dream Child, Freddy's Dead, The New Nightmare, and Freddy vs. Jason. I would like to have like the individual cases of all of these and stuff like that, but these were just really, really cheap. I'll be honest again. A fantastic deal, really. I believe I got them both for under both sets of these for under $10, so really about $16 or so for both sets to get all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So really, you can't not do that. The only drawback, like I said, is they don't have their individual cases, so some of the little pictures I have for each movie are a little bit off. Like, you can tell it's not really Freddy Krueger's makeup in the first movie, especially. If you turn to the back, you can see more so what it was like. I think that's from the first movie anyway. And but still, a great deal. It's more than worth it, really. Yeah, I could do a whole video just talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in general. But I'm going to specifically talk about the first movie, and then next weekend I'll be rewatching Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. I'll do a review on that next weekend, and each weekend I'll do a review on each Nightmare on Elm Street movie in order. So that's something you'll have to look forward to. Yeah, and it'll eventually lead to a Freddy vs. Jason review, which I know I promised originally, but I think it makes more sense to go in order with the original series of each. Now, I don't have all the Friday the 13th movies, even though I've seen them all, so I don't think I can review all of them without having because I don't have a fresh take on all of them, by rewatching them. I don't think I can do that with those, because I don't have all of them. Even though I've seen them all, I'd want to, not forget anything. And it'd just make for a sloppy review if I don't remember certain things about it. But I'll definitely do all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I'll definitely review Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah, really, this movie it could very well be my favorite in the series, as I'm sure it's many others' favorite. My favorites personally of the series were the first one, this one, Part 3, the Dream Warriors, and also I actually quite like Part 5, the Dream Child. Now I know that's one of the more hated ones from the series, but I actually really like it. I like the sort of more gothic, serious type of tone in it. I also like the whole story about Amanda Krueger and the Bastard of 100 Maniacs part of the story, like that being expanded upon and more explored. I'll be getting to that one eventually within the next few weeks, of course, because I'm going in order. And I like Dream Master as well. Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, I'll talk more about that next weekend, but it's probably my least favorite of the series, at least as of my last run through of the series. I just find it a little more dull than the other ones. And Freddy's Dead, it definitely had too much comedy in it, but I still found it funny. But again, I'll get more in depth about all of them within the next month, basically. And the New Nightmare, I just don't really like the whole series being a movie aspect of that, even though it was fun seeing all the actors and actresses again, or at least some of them. And I actually like Freddy vs. Jason. But again, we're not talking about the entire series right now in general. We'll get to all those movies for the next month, as I said about 20 times by now. We're here to talk about the first movie, the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And really, it has one of the creepiest openings to any horror movie I've seen, really. I mean, I've seen plenty of horror movies that sort of give us like a quick introduction, like a quick stalking or chase scene with the killer in it and stuff. But right at the beginning of the movie, we see Tina. She's in a dream. She's stuck in of course, the iconic boiler room. And it's another thing I like about this movie. They really keep Freddy in the shadows for most of the movie. They make this... There's just like an element in this movie that makes him a lot more scary than he is in the sequels. There's just like an intensity. There's a really good feeling. Well, for us fans, there's a good feeling of like the walls closing in on our characters, like they're trapped in this world that Freddy controls. They're trapped inside this world Freddy controls. They can't really get out of it. They can't really avoid him forever. Constantly feels like he's eventually just going to close in on all of them. So there's really like this doom type of feeling that really resonates throughout the movie that I don't think any of the other movies in the series quite pulled off quite as well. And I'd say this is definitely the scariest of the series as well. I mean, it's not as scary to me because I've seen way more than my fair share of horror movies, and I've seen this series all the way through quite a few times by now, so I really don't get scared by things anymore, too much anyway, because I just really enjoy it more than anything. But definitely I can still feel the tenseness, the creepiness. Robert Englund is just amazing in this role, because right from the first movie I can see plain as day that he just brings like a creepy, scary, yet very fun charisma to the role of Freddy that I honestly don't think anyone else could have pulled off, past or present. So really, he is just highly, highly impressive. And someone else I have to praise in this movie is definitely Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy Thompson. And Nancy Thompson is definitely one of the most iconic survivors, or one of the most iconic lead females in any horror movie whatsoever. And Heather Langenkamp just pulls her off so well. She exudes like sort of a strong yet fragile and innocent type of performance. She exudes like a strength in her role while at the same time maintaining that sort of I feel bad for her type of feeling as well, like a vulnerability. And she just pulls off really, really nicely. And someone else who I also liked a fair amount in this is John Saxon as her father, Lieutenant Don Thompson. And, he's the cop. He's a lieutenant in this movie. He has, like, a strong, firm performance. He's not seen too much in the movie, but I still like him quite a bit. And, of course, Johnny Depp. It was actually his first movie. And, he's Nancy Thompson's boyfriend, and he's a pretty likable guy in the movie. He does fairly well, especially for his first role. And, those are definitely the highlights of the cast, although they all do, fairly well, I'd say. And really, though, the series in general, I read Robert Englund's Hollywood Monster book, so I know a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff about all these movies. And because of reading that book, I've just grown a much larger appreciation for the series as a whole and the effort behind it from every angle, really. And definitely respect the series a lot more and definitely admire it quite a bit as well. So much work goes into these movies. I mean, even the ones that were a little bit more questionable to some of the fans, they really tried here, guys. And I think for the most part they really, really pulled it all off. And without Robert Englund, without Wes Craven coming up with this idea originally when he was a child and seeing that man outside his window at his home, this wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't have had this unique idea for something that was very, very original compared to a lot of the other slashers. It definitely had a different concept in general compared to movies like Friday the 13th. That entire series is definitely different from that. Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, stuff like that. Even movies like Psycho and the Town that Dreaded Sundown and stuff like that. It just separated itself so much from those other movies. And even today, the Freddy Krueger character and the whole movie, the idea of the movie in general, is still very, very unique. And that's really saying something, guys, because there's tons of horror films nowadays that are completely unoriginal. And we're not going to get any more icons like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, or Michael Myers and Leatherface at any point while humans are still alive and ruling this planet, at least until the apes take over. But we're never going to get any other iconic horror characters like this. And it's not like they were trying very much anyway, but still. And so let's talk about the specific movie instead of just gushing about the series as a whole. How about that one? So Tina, like I said, the opening dream sequence, she basically has her friend Nancy, Thompson, come over with her boyfriend Rod and, Glenn, which is Johnny Depp, and, he's Nancy's boyfriend. So she invites them all over, when her parents are gone, and, basically because she's afraid of seeing the man in her dreams again. And her and Nancy sort of have a conversation like, oh yeah, I seen him before too, And, the man with the striped sweater and the hat and the knives for fingers and stuff like that. And, Glenn tries to reassure them that, all I do is just turn away and, realize it's just a dream and things like that, which actually comes into play later. Both what Glenn tells Nancy throughout the movie and what Nancy's mom tells her later. But basically, Rod shows up, Tina's boyfriend, and, Tina and Rod end up going upstairs and having sex, of course, how that kind of thing goes. But, and so they have sex, they promise to have no more fights with each other and things like that, because Rod's like the stereotypical kind of greaser, bad boy type of boyfriend. We've seen those before. And, excuse me. And, she wakes up and she goes into a dream world again. And we get one of the most memorable dream sequences in the entire series. It's really simple yet so recognizable. Because, she wanders outside because, in the dream Freddy's basically throwing rocks out her window. And, she goes outside, of course, on her own. But it's a dream sequence, so where else is she going to go? Freddy's going to show up anywhere anyway. But, she goes outside in the dream, and basically you see Freddy, this iconic shot of Freddy walking down the alley with his arms stretched out, like increased a lot, wider than they normally would be, a lot longer than they normally would be, I mean. And, he just walks down the alley with his arms stretched out, and it's really cool. Then the music in this movie is really awesome as well. It's like totally 80s. It's totally 80s, but I really like the songs they chose for this, and it just really goes well to bring like sort of like a frantic, and like a walls closing in tone to the action or the horror moments of the movie. It's really cool. And Freddy chases Tina, and she gets to the door, but he tackles her and they roll around a little bit. And yeah, you can tell Freddy doesn't really take his stuff too seriously at first. He really likes toying around with his victims, and he likes basically playing with them. That has a dual meaning. But Rod eventually wakes up and he sees Tina rolling around. Nothing's on her, but she's having a dream. So to the reality, it looks like she's just basically frantically moving around like that. And eventually she gets rolled up on the wall, and eventually her chest gets sliced open with Freddy's claws. His knives on his glove. And Rod doesn't really do anything. He just kind of sits in the corner and yells Tina's name. What could he do really? I mean, he could have tried to pull her down there, yes, and woke her up. But it's whatever. And he actually gets knocked down by Tina flying around too. It's funny. But of course Nancy and Glenn hear that as well. And you've seen earlier Nancy was more reserved. She didn't want to just go off and have sex with Glenn or anything like that. So they were still up and moving around and stuff. And Nancy and Glenn go in there, and they basically see the blood all over the room. They see that Rod went out through the window, so it looks like basically Rod killed Tina. So that's pretty much the movie, guys. I'll catch you guys next time, and peace. Yeah, not doing that. Basically, the next day, the police are on the search for Rod, and Nancy was pretty traumatized by Tina's death. It's obviously her best friend, and you see her dad's on the case. John Saxon's character, Don Thompson, and he basically uses Nancy as a way to draw Rod to her. And she goes to school the next day, and Rod tackles her in the bushes, and he basically tries to explain to her that it wasn't me. But it just looked like no one. He was saying someone else is in the room with them and under the covers, and how could he not know that someone else is under the covers with you? Obviously, you don't know what the hell's going on yet, so of course they're skeptical, but it's still a little bit annoying. It's intentionally that way though, and Nancy's slowly starting to believe him because she had actually previously seen Freddy in her dreams as well, like her and Tina were talking about. And Rod is actually arrested. He's chased down by the cops because Don was watching Nancy with his friend, his cop buddies and things like that. So there's that. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, so once Nancy really starts to believe what's going on, Rod describes to her who he's seen, sweater, hat, burned glove, and knives for fingers and things like that. Nancy goes into the dream world, and she basically, let's see, I just want to make sure I'm getting things right here. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. She basically has Glenn watch her while she sleeps. And she goes into a dream world, and she basically ends up seeing... let's see. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to talk about here and what I don't want to talk about. Okay, and she basically sees, in the dream she's in, Glenn's following behind her a little bit, but of course separated from her so she can get messed with individually. And in the dream, she basically sees Rod sitting in the jail cell, and then Freddy like just walking right through the cell bars, and like taunting her, like, oh yeah, look who I'm gonna get next, watch me. Then he starts pulling on the bed sheets, and that causes her to wake up, and her and Glenn go over to the county jail. And they beg to see Rod, but of course the delay gives Freddy enough time to get to Rod in his sleep, and he basically wraps the sheets to the bed around his neck and hangs him from the jail cell from the bars on the window and stuff like that. So they come in and it looks like Rod just committed suicide. So of course that's going to be what they're going to say happens this time, even though Nancy and Glenn kind of really know what's going on. And then they have a funeral for Rod, and you see like who I think is supposed to be Rod's father, sort of like giving looks at Don and stuff like that. Because he was the one who's supposed to be watching him in that county jail, basically. So, but still, ruled as a suicide pretty much. And at Rod's funeral, Nancy basically just starts losing herself. Really, not really losing herself, but she just gets more and more obsessed with what's going on with Freddy and all that. And let's see. Yeah, okay. Her mother and dad are divorced. Don and her mother Marge or Margaret, and so they're living separately. And Marge basically has Nancy seek psychiatric help. And she basically gets hooked up to this machine to monitor her sleep and her REM and stuff like that. And when she goes into a deep sleep and what she goes through, they're trying to take a scientific look at what's going on with that. And basically they even see like the scales. They just like either go really intense or they like freeze completely. So it really shows like the power Freddy really has, and it's completely unknown to anyone else in the world like what this is. What is it really? And doctors are completely baffled and stuff like that. And luckily Nancy wakes up before Freddy can kill her. But this is one of the bigger things. She wakes up and she realizes she does have the cut Freddy gave her on her arm, or like on her, like around her wrist actually. And she actually managed to pull out his hat from the dream world as well. And this leads to like a sort of like an emotional confrontation between Nancy and Marge, her mother, because you feel like Marge isn't telling Nancy something, and Marge just keeps on denying what Nancy's telling her and what she's showing her now. Excuse the voice crack. With the hat and different things like that. And Nancy sort of catches on and figures out, oh yeah, she does know something. Do you know who I'm talking about here? And basically we find out from Nancy's mother that Fred Krueger was a child murderer, and he's also a child molester too, which I'm sure is it's implied in the movie. They were going to be more direct about Freddy being a molester too, but they cut back on that for some reason. I'm not sure why they left it out of the original, but child murder, you can imagine that also involves molesting. So basically found out that he was a child murderer, and Nancy's mother and the rest of the parents in Springwood, pretty much in Springwood, basically tracked down Fred Krueger after a cop, like a search warrant went unsigned or was falsely signed or something like that, and that allowed Fred to go free. And thus Nancy's mom and the rest of the parents tracked him down to like a old boiler room or like a warehouse type of area, and they basically put gasoline all around the place, and they basically lit the place on fire and watched it burn, really. And her mother takes her down to the basement, and she basically shows her the glove she kept from him, and she basically says Fred Krueger isn't real. Fred Krueger isn't here because Mommy killed him. So there's that. We find out more about who Freddy is and stuff like that. There's pretty much no redeeming qualities to Freddy at all, really. Let's see. Yeah, he killed about 20 children before the parents finally killed him. And, it's basically him exacting his revenge, for all the parents killing him and stuff like that by going after their children, within the dreams. Let's see. And Nancy decides she wants to confront Freddy for good, and one final test between the two. Basically, she wants to have Glenn over to watch her again, but her parents are basically freaked out by Nancy now because her mother had put like bars around like all the windows of the house outside all the windows of the house after their confrontation about it. Nancy's mom also slapped Nancy because Nancy's mom had been drinking a lot, and Nancy called her out on it, so that's why Nancy was slapped by her own mother. So that's fun. But Glenn's parents are pretty freaked out by what's going on with Nancy across the street. Glenn's mother feels bad for her, but her father's like, I don't want our son hanging out with that girl anymore. And so Nancy tries to call over there for Glenn, but of course, he's asleep, listening to his music and watching TV at the same time. And Glenn's father basically just, hangs up the phone on Nancy and then leaves it open so she can't call back. So, yeah, Nancy's pretty much on her own, and she's just, she can't get Glenn's attention, so all she can do is really hope that Glenn doesn't fall asleep. But of course he does. We don't actually see Glenn like in a dream sequence or anything like that. But all of a sudden we see Glenn laying on his bed, and Freddy's glove comes up from the middle of the bed and just pulls him down, and he's pulled in, like literally into the bed. And like a second or two goes past, and we just see like this blood like spurting out, just like gushing and splurting out all over the room, on the ceiling, all over the walls and floor and stuff like that. And of course, yeah, Glenn's mother comes in. Yeah, she's pretty freaked out. Yeah, but I get it. That I feel bad for Glenn because he was a good guy in the movie. He was a likable boyfriend for Nancy and stuff like that. But I feel bad for him, but it is what it is. And let's see. Yeah, that scene was also pretty creepy because right before Freddy got to Glenn, this is a scene Spinnernet wanted me to mention, and that was the moment where she was trying to call Glenn, and she pulled out the cord on the phone, but it turned out she was like struggling with what's real and what's not because she's been awake for 7+ days at this point, and she has like that white in her hair and stuff, and so she's trying to she's really struggling with what's real and what's not, and because of that, when she pulls out the cord to the phone, she still hears it ringing because it's Freddy getting more influence because of her lack of sleep. And basically she picks up the phone again, and you hear Freddy say, "Oh, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy." And then you see the tongue come out of the phone, try to get it into her mouth. She throws it away. Then of course Glenn's death, like I just talked about. It's one of the more iconic deaths in the series, even up to this point as well. It's just really gruesome. And yeah, I feel bad for the dad because you see him, he's just really just shocked about it. It's like, what the hell happened, pretty much. And it leads to Don and Nancy's father and other cops coming over to take a look at it. And Nancy basically begs her father to come to their house in 20 minutes or so and break down the door so they can catch the guy. But of course Nancy's father doesn't understand that's actually a guy in a dream right now. And of course Nancy ends up fighting Freddy again in the dream sequence, and she times it fairly well with the alarm she set on her watch, and she's actually able to pull Freddy out into the real world, like she did with the hat earlier in the movie. And yeah, this video is going long, but really it's Nightmare on Elm Street, so it's worth it. But she pulls Freddy out into the real world, and we just get this whole elaborate chase throughout Nancy's house. And Nancy had set up a lot of little booby traps before she fell asleep. When she pulled Freddy into the real world, and Freddy ends up getting hit in the stomach by a sledgehammer. It's just kind of funny to see him react to that. And then he gets this little thing set off. We'll get to that in a second. Well, he basically ends up taking a tumble down the stairs, and then he also trips over a wire that shoots a little firecracker. It might be a firecracker, I'm not sure what it is, but it lights him on fire. And no, it doesn't light him on fire. He chases Nancy into the basement, and then she throws this glass over him, and then she lights him on fire with a match. And then Freddy tries to get upstairs to the basement to follow Nancy, but she pushes him back down the stairs, and he's just like burning, but he's still alive. He's crawling, he's walking with it, and it was really difficult to do a scene from what I read. Just any fire stunt with all that makeup on definitely takes a toll. And and so she thinks she traps Freddy in the basement. She tries to call her dad over from across the street back at Glenn's house. And yeah, finally, I'm sorry for my speech right now. I'm stumbling quite a lot right now. I apologize. And finally, the cop notices that, oh yeah, hey, maybe I should go tell the lieutenant that his daughter is screaming out the window for him to come over. And so Don finally runs over to the house, and she leads him to the basement, and they see it's on fire. They see it's on fire, basically, so they know something else is going on here. But then you see that the footsteps are actually, each one of the footsteps is on fire, which is pretty dreadful, yet cool to see. It had a really good dreadful feeling to it, though. And you see it leads up the stairs to where Nancy's mother was sleeping. And then you see Nancy comes into her mother's room, and you see Freddy on top of her mother, and he's basically like over her, and just burning her to death with by clinging to her body while he's on fire like that. And we get one of the most bizarre deaths in the movie, probably the most bizarre death in the movie, because her mother just basically turns into a skeleton, and then just like light flashes when she like sinks into the bed, like really slowly, as Don watches at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of obvious that maybe Nancy wasn't making all this up in her head. Maybe she wasn't going insane. That's pretty clear now, because yeah, your ex-wife just died, buddy. But anyway, it is fairly sad as well, and Don does comfort her a little bit, and then her father leaves the room, and she knows Freddy's still around, and the door closes on its own and locks, of course. And her and Freddy just have like a final standoff. He rises up from the bed, and she sort of remembers what Glenn told her earlier, about you have to turn away and show it. You're not afraid. Just tell yourself it's not real. It's a dream, or it's just a dream. Pretty much, it is real, but you get my point. And she also remembers what her mom actually told her earlier. I didn't mention it, but she basically said, "You're so good at facing things. That's your gift, Nancy." She remembers that, and she basically takes away Freddy's, hold over her, and with the fear and everything that's been going on, she takes away his power and says, "You're just a dream. You're shit." She does it really effectively too. It's a really effective scene. And just as Freddy lunges at her, he loses the power to be in the real world, and he just sort of disintegrates, and disappears pretty much. And so that's most of the plot, and the ending is pretty cool as well. I like the ending quite a bit. And Nancy had also told Freddy that she wants all her loved ones back, like Glenn, Rod, Tina, her mother. And basically you see the next morning that Nancy's mother is alive because of her overpowering Freddy at the end, pretty much. And her mother says, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to stop drinking now, Nancy, because I just don't feel like it anymore." And it's all bright lights and marshmallows and all that. And her friends pull up in Glenn's car. Tina and Rod are there too. But then all of a sudden, when Nancy gets in the car and starts waving to her mother, the hood goes over the car, and it's the striped sweater pattern, and then all the windows close, and they can't open the doors to the car. They can't get the windows down. Nancy bangs on the window and screams to her mother, but her mother just waves at her. And then, of course, as Nancy's mother stands in front of the door to the house, the glass breaks, and Freddy's hand comes out and just pulls Nancy's mom in. And it's a good ending, but it's just kind of funny how you just see an entire body just go straight through a little hole in the door. It's kind of funny. He's like, "Oh yeah, hey." But it was still a pretty awesome ending. Of course, they always got a hint that Freddy's still lurking around at the end. We get that classic ending. And a decent setup for a sequel. We do see Nancy again in Part 3, Dream Warriors. So yeah, I'll be getting to that in 2 weeks. But of course, I'll be reviewing part 2, Freddy's Revenge, next weekend. So yeah, there's my very, very lengthy review of the original, iconic 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Just one of the best horror movies of all time, and definitely the best part 1 to any slasher series, no question. Better than Friday the 13th Part 1, better than the original Halloween. Just my preference, sorry. It just starts off so perfectly. So yeah, that's all I should say about it. I could go on about this for probably another 30 minutes to an hour. Just praising all this different stuff. But, and they had such a small budget too. I mean, only $1.8 million. And they were able to pull this off and start a whole mess of worms for the next few decades. So congratulations to everyone who was involved. Wes Craven, Robert Englund, of course, Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon. Everyone who was involved in this, in making this movie possible. Everyone who was involved in starting this franchise. Cast, crew, producers, makeup artist. Fantastic job, by the way, on Freddy. Freddy's makeup is actually a little bit different in this one than it is in the later sequels. And it's just a lot more slimy and slightly more realistic than it is later on too. But just congrats to everyone, great job. This movie just stands the test of time, and everyone knows who Freddy Krueger is. You're going to be really hard pressed to find someone who doesn't know who Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street is. So, or what a Nightmare on Elm Street is. So really though, you guys started something amazing, and truly one of, if not the best horror series of all time. And definitely the best part 1 to any slasher series ever. No question in my opinion. So yeah, I'll catch you guys tomorrow for my review of the Walking Dead episode tonight. And yeah, I'll definitely catch you guys next weekend to review part 2, Freddy's Revenge, right here. And yeah, I'll catch you guys tomorrow for The Walking Dead. I apologize for me stumbling so much in this, but I'll see you guys then, tomorrow for The Walking Dead, and next weekend for part 2, Freddy's Revenge. And peace. Happy 30 years. Welcome to prime time, bitch.